I'm actually delighted to be joined by Jennifer Tombaugh of Tauck. Jennifer, why don't you just describe what you do, how long you've been there, and a little bit of the history of Tauck.
So thanks, Tom. It's great to be here, and thank you for the invitation. Again, my name is Jennifer Tombaugh. I am fortunate to be the president of Tauck, and I've been at the company now for 19 years, and I'd say probably about 8 or 9 years now in my current role. And I feel, despite even the challenges of the time, probably the best job that I've ever had. We are a 95-year-old company. We are celebrating that this year. We started our business as the first tour operator, licensed tour operator in the United States, traveling on the dusty roads of New England. And now we are on all 70 countries on all 7 continents, running our river, our land, and our small ship program. So it's interesting for us this year, not only because it's our 95th, but as a family-owned company, we still have a rich archive and a lot of history to draw back on. And we actually did have to shut down the company in 1942. So we're hoping though that shutdown doesn't bode for the length of this one's, which is hopefully much shorter.
Yeah, I mean, the current crisis is about as grim as I can imagine, but it isn't a Second World War. I think we could be confident on that, but one thing I've learned over the last 6 months is not to be confident in anything. I think it'd be, just tell me, when did you start in Europe, and what is your activity in Europe nowadays?
Sure, well, we've been operating in Europe since 1991 on the yellow roads, as we've always called them. Literally, I have the book that Arthur Tauck and the first team took out on the road of wanting to go off the beaten path. Arthur had spent his time as a young man in the Air Force in Germany, and had spent a lot of time traveling around Europe, mainly by bicycle. And when he decided that he wanted to bring his guests that were, again, largely Americans, to Europe for the first time, he wanted to show them the Europe that was in his eye, which was along the yellow roads of the Michelin maps. And so I have the Michelin book from that year that they went out and explored, how they would showcase what Arthur remembered so fondly. And so our presence and footprint is now throughout Europe, again on land, with our family programs, with our classic programs, our small groups, and certainly with our river cruises, which have grown in tremendous popularity on the Rhine-Main-Danube, the Rhone, the Saône, in France. And now this year was to be the launch of our beautiful new ship, the Andarina, on the Douro in Portugal. So we have a wide presence across Europe. It's still the #1 destination for our travelers, even in a recent survey that we put out to about 4,000 of our patrons that responded. And even more so than North America. They are really eager to come back to Europe, and we're very eager to take them. Unfortunately, now we have ceased our operations, at least as of this conversation, through middle of September. We had really hoped to be operating in September. We still hold out some hope for the fall, but the current challenges, certainly in the US and with the borders, make that a bit more ominous.
Yeah, I think the hope was that some of the September peak would have been salvaged, but it's starting to look over optimistic to hope that we're going to see any volume at all in September. And I think it's going to be a fairly slow climb back. Do you think the recovery will occur in 2021, or are we going to have to wait until 2022 before we have any real repeat of what we saw in 2019?
Yes, I said a few months ago that I wish I had a crystal ball, and even as of about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was much more optimistic about the fall and winter operations. And then things have obviously changed their tone here in the US. So I'm hesitant to predict anything at this point for all the reasons that you've stated as well. That being said, we do look to 2021 being more of an on-ramp year. I think that there won't be a V-shaped recovery. I think there's a lot to learn about a vaccine, which is seemingly the holy grail in all of this for a confidence in consumer return to travel in a meaningful way. I think there's always going to be the first movers is with anything that relaunches or begins again. But we're really looking to 2022 to have a much more robust year, especially in Europe with Oberammergau and with Floriade returning. Those are always big sellers for us. And so I think it's common, certainly as I hear among the industry, that 2022 looks to be a much brighter year with a recovery in 2021, depending on when either better therapeutical opportunities might emerge or in fact a vaccine with wide distribution.
I know. I mean, people keep talking about U-shaped recoveries and V-shaped recoveries. I have a feeling that Latin alphabet doesn't have the right character for the sort of recovery we're going to see. We have to go off and look at Myanmar script or something to find something to duplicate what we're going to be going through in the next 12 to 18 months. In all seriousness, I think that the is there not the case? I'll put the optimistic prognosis to you for 2021, assuming that we're going to see at best not a token but a minor recovery at the end of the year. I think the optimistic prognosis for 2021 is to say, look, we had a lot of business on the books for 2020. This was going to be a great year. This was nearly everybody was saying they were looking forward to at least a 10% growth in business. And that has stalled. It hasn't cancelled, or a lot of it hasn't cancelled. A lot of it is they've turned around and said, all right, we couldn't do it in 2020, we'll do it in 2021. And things that were happening in 2020 are being rescheduled for 2021. Oberammergau would be a classic case. So we've got all the business that a big chunk of the business that we were going to have in 2020. And then we've got all the business that we would normally have, the latent standard demand in 2021. So there's an argument that we've got a lot of pent-up demand and natural demand for these products next year. How does that run with you?
Right. I think you're right on many levels. I think that there's an enormous amount of pent-up demand. Everyone I know is eager to get out of their homes, and they want to travel and they want to explore. But they want to be safe in doing that. And I think the health and safety protocols that Tour Care, that I know that ETOA has been working very closely with USTOA and with the Canadian Tour Operator Association, will help reassure the traveler that it is safe. And I think that when again, a vaccine or a therapeutic happens, that there will be a robust eagerness to embrace those plans that everyone has put on ice or has canceled for this year. So I believe that entirely. I think it's human nature. We're natural explorers. We're going to get out. As I mentioned, our guests want to get back to Europe. They want to see all the places that they love and they hold in their hearts. They want to see their plans come through. We're very fortunate to have a very loyal patron base. And so we do hold a lot of gratitude for them and a lot of confidence that they will return in 21. Right now, we're seeing about 50% retention for people booking and transferring their bookings into 2021 or otherwise holding with us for perhaps 2022 too for Oberammergau, again, those reschedules. But we have a lot of people that are on the sidelines or who have canceled. And so it's going to be a matter of how comfortable are those people to put their toe, jump right back in perhaps into the travel waters for next year. So, and that's what we don't know. So we know our patrons will be coming back. We know that we can't wait to bring them, and we feel good about 21. It's a question of how many new travelers will again have that confidence to take that leap. And a lot of it depends on consumer sentiment at the time, which I think is increasingly linked, at least in the US side, to a medical solution.
And I think that's a worldwide issue myself. I think that people have been frightened into their homes and have been frightened into new patterns of behavior. And it's going to take quite a lot to lift them out of it. And I'm particularly struck by a remark made at a seminar that you attended, where someone pointed out that people are willing to comprehend risks closer to home. It's a taller order for them to comprehend them further away from home. And this, I think, is one of the fears that we've got, and it's one of the reasons why we put together the Tauck program, to try and answer that point. But do you feel that people, I suppose the question really is do you feel that people have got to decide, or be in a position to decide, that the experience is worth the risk? Everything involves a risk, even going to the refrigerator to get a glass of milk, if that's what you go to your refrigerator for. Even that involves a danger of sliding on the kitchen floor. Everything involves risk. Do you think the question is just finding a way of saying, look, this experience is going to be unique, and this is your one opportunity to do it?
Like, you're absolutely right. Everybody has a different risk profile, and this is a bit of the challenge of all of this, right? Because there might be people like me who tend to be a little bit more risk tolerant, and I'll pretty much get on a plane to go anywhere right now. And there's others who would look at me. Well, in fact, I talked to a friend yesterday who flew to South Carolina, and there was a person on board in a hazmat suit. So you can see that people adopt different beliefs and based upon what they know, what they feel, what their own tolerance is, and we can't control that. And I think we can argue numbers all day, and I've had this debate with many colleagues and friends about what the numbers are really telling us about this virus and this issue here and now. The challenge is that the information is changing so quickly, and that there is so many unknowns. And I think that's what causes everyone to take just a bit more pause with this thing. Everything involves a risk. Getting on a plane involves a risk. Travel, by its definition, is a risk. And yet, even among our own patron base, we have those who are much more comfortable staying in the US or going to Europe, and then others who are more comfortable moving far afield to a place like Indonesia or to East Africa or to other parts of the world that might be perceived by some as being more risky. So our goal is to make for all the best effort that we can to protect their health and safety as best we can. We are going to be living in a COVID world for the foreseeable future. And so how can we mitigate that risk? How can we control that risk so it isn't this complete great unknown? And that I think there's part of what has been concerning is the question, does anyone sort of have a handle on it? And I think we have to focus on not trying to solve the whole problem, and we'll leave that to the medical experts, or certainly I will, but we can control the environment, and we can control the experience as best we can and offer that reassurance to those guests who are willing to go out into the world. And so that's what we've learned over 95 years of operating, and certainly through all kinds of different crises and global response issues. And so we've got a tremendous team that has been working literally every day on enhancing and developing and learning from our past situations, whether they've been other sort of viral outbreaks, or if they've been political disruption or climate issues that have caused risk to be inserted into the operations that we have. And so I think as I talk to others in the industry, yourself included, peers, everybody is working as hard as they can to provide that. We're never to completely be able to guarantee that COVID won't exist somewhere that they're going, but we can do a heck of a lot to reassure a guest to be comfortable and willing to travel. Many people, as we've seen again through those 50% who've already transferred to 2021, are willing to do that. There are others who've told us, frankly, we're not going to travel until there's a vaccine in place. And so what we want to do is be ready and able, as again, with all the preparation that we're doing and will plan to do before we welcome our first guests back, to offer that reassurance to those who might be willing to put a toe in the water more quickly.
I mean, I mean, there is a counter argument to these points we're making. I mean, if we look back at the great slumps of the past, and none of the great slumps of the past equal what we're going through at the moment, I hasten to add. But if you look at things like 1986 or 1991, when you joined Tauck, and 2001 and 2007-8, the scares of 86 and 91 and 2001 were generated by terrorism. It wasn't economic, it wasn't to do with disease. It was generated by terrorism, and the fear was palpable. The terrorists, in fact, did a very good job, and the politicians did a very good job on behalf of the terrorists to increase the impact of the fear that the terrorists want to generate. But it was interesting that there was just a tipping point where it suddenly became irrelevant. And the moment it became irrelevant, it was like the sun breaking out through a cloud at midday. Everything came back on stream. And it's just possible, and this is me being determinedly optimistic, and the worst form of optimism is determined optimism. But me being determinedly optimistic, it's just possible. We'll suddenly see, it could be a vaccine, it could be a massive reduction in the incidence rate of coronavirus. People suddenly going, actually, now is the time. Now is the time. Do you think there's a chance of that?
Yeah, I of course. I mean, I think there's all. Listen, this whole year has been breaking all, as I said, predictions that I've had. So I'm happy to be proven wrong on this one. I think that a bit of the challenge and the difference here, and you're right. When we certainly, I don't have the historical experience from being at Tauck during 91 or 86, but I hear a lot in our lore that there was a longer recovery period, and certainly we saw after 2001 and even 2003 and even in 08 and 09 to the financial crisis. With each issue that happened, Americans especially, because relative to Europeans, I think Americans tend to skew more skittish about regaining their place in the travel world. We saw a shortening of a fear window, if you will. So in other words, when an event happened, initially it would take 9 months to see a recovery. And then a few years later, it was 6 months to see a recovery, and then 3 months to see a recovery. And I think that's helped by, or hurt, or in this case hurt, I think by a 24/7 news stream and things coming on and off the news cycle and in social media as quickly as they have. I think so we definitely saw an increasing resilience among Americans, I guess is my bottom line. And with that in mind, I think it is possible that Americans can demonstrate that resilience once again. What we're fighting right now is that 24/7 cycle, which has every headline being something that's fearful and negative. And so it's possible that once a vaccine's announced, once it's proven to be safe, that you will see a resurgence. And in fact, there are some of our programs for 2021, to play to your point, that are already sold out, and that we are opening up 2022 to ensure that those guests can make their future plans. I think it is something different though when it has the global nature that it does, and it has the personal health risk that it does. And the unknown factor of, even when a vaccine is announced, its efficacy and its overall impact on someone's well-being. There's also a question of comfort from a level of, is it the experience that I signed up for? So, a lot of folks have waited their entire life to take the trip to Europe of their dreams, and they have a certain idea about what that experience is going to be like, and they'd like to see it be what's in their mind's eye. So I think, I guess I have a measure. I believe strongly in resilience overall. I believe strongly in the resilience of the human spirit, and certainly of my fellow Americans to explore the world again. I think that there's a few more headwinds than we've seen in the past, but I do think we can overcome them.
That's such a positive take, a positive and pessimistic take. I was just taken by your thought that there is an issue as to what the product is we're selling, and I'm trying to be positive at the moment, but it's very difficult to maintain. I mean, this is not your market, but if you were in the 18-30 market, which is a very different kettle of fish, not to say that everybody, there are no 18 to 30-year-olds on Tauck, but it's not your core constituency, if I may say that. They might want to go to a nightclub. Well, you can't go to a nightclub if they're enforcing social distancing, or you could, but it wouldn't be much of an experience. And I think that to a certain extent, crowds are part of the experience, not just of travel, but of life. And people want to go to busy places, partly because it's an indication that those places are popular. It endorses your choice. And the fact that you're looking at an environment where that experience is going to be missing, and sitting at a long table in a provincial French restaurant with everybody reasonably close together, this is not on the menu just at the moment, and it can't be until we've sorted this problem out. So there are issues in terms of the nature of the experience that we're offering. But surely there's a flip side. I mean, the flip side is that there are no issues with over-tourism at the moment. This is not on the agenda in Europe at the moment. It's a fascinating to see the reverse of the situation, where London, Amsterdam, Paris, Venice, Florence, Rome, they're screaming for people to come back. And you will never experience Europe like you will be experiencing Europe in the next 6 to 8 months. And I imagine some of the deals being offered will be extraordinary. Not always. I'd be interested to hear your theories as to how the airlines are going to be coming back on board. But I think the opportunity for clients to go and have something which will be completely unique, which is a Europe underpopulated with tourists, I just thought would be a real pull. What is your take on the airlines? I mean, we're hearing kind of mixed messages coming out in that area.
I guess what we saw even, well, in the world of over-tourism, which wasn't so long ago, that we had a mantra that small is big. People were wanting to have more intimate experiences in the smaller groups, to explore places that they just couldn't see easily on their own or in larger groups. And that reflects in our riverboats and how we've built them to hold less than 100 guests in France and have such a few number of cabins. And by the way, our ships are operating, albeit with German crew and German staff right now across Europe with our partners at Skilla, who are just simply fantastic. So we already are learning how this is going to work and what that experience is going to be like. And it's quite positive, actually, all things considered. But this idea of small is big will continue to resonate because people will still want that access. They're going to want, now, instead of avoiding crowds, it might be more about expanded personal space. And so we are well on our way to being able to offer great experiences because of that trend that we saw even before COVID occurred. They're also signing up for the amazing Tauck directors that we have. And I have to tell you, I miss these folks so much because of their energy, their enthusiasm, their understanding of the local places and how to make those experiences so special, even in this unusual time. And I'm so proud of all the work that they've done to delight our guests. And I know that they're going to do that again, even again, in this unusual experience. So will some of the experiences be different? Sure. But I think there's also ways, and we've been working very, very closely with our partners around the world, and in particularly in Europe, on how we can offer those opportunities to delight them. And I'm very confident that with our team back in Connecticut and around the world with our Tauck directors globally, that we will be able to deliver those experiences. So I think in terms of how the market comes back, I do think some FIT market, the independent market, will probably be the first toes in the water. I think we're all very reassured by seeing Europeans traveling. That gives us a lot of confidence. One of our colleagues just recently traveled on one of our riverboats to assess that experience, and her pictures gave us such hope about what that experience will be when we eventually can bring American travelers again. So the more images, and this is where I think the social media and digital marketing can really help us all, is to offer that reassurance by seeing people traveling across Europe and having a great time. Because all of us want to be doing what you all can do right now, which is to get on a plane and explore the European countrysides and the cities once again.
I'm almost tempted to leave it there because that was such a beautiful thought. I'm more intrigued though as to how we get, I suppose what you're saying is that the catalyst for recovery will be seeing people moving. I mean, we've just got to get some flow of passengers going again. We've got to get some momentum behind people going to Europe and coming back again, saying we had a wonderful time, why aren't you there too? This is the kickstart. where do you think that kickstart will come from? You mentioned the FITs. I mean, is it possible that the airlines might help? Are they going to come through with some killer deals?
Well, so I was asked this the other day. We had actually a call with some of our German tourism colleagues about what will help consumer confidence. The very first thing that has to happen is there needs to be a joint agreement between the US and the EU to let Americans come. And right now, we won't operate with a level 4 State Department warning. Right now, Americans are clearly and understandably, in some regards, not welcome. It's challenging for us here in Connecticut. We actually have things very well under control, and I think our experiences are, knock on wood, and our experiences here are much more similar to what you all are experiencing in Europe. If you're in the southern part of the US or the western, it's quite different. So I think that we need the borders to open. And I do think there will be some natural traffic that will happen as a result. I've talked to some folks in the airline business crossing from US to Europe, and they're seeing a lot of dual passport holders that are flying, and we're eager to go back and see family and take their own families to explore their homeland. And that's been very promising, but that's only going to be for a limited amount of capacity and demand, I guess, that they can handle. So we need the borders to open first and foremost. And then, as I said, we still have people on the books for the balance of the year, and they're really hoping to travel. So there will be an opportunity for independent travelers and groups to come as soon as that happens. And those will be the more, I think it's like a new technology. It's sort of, they'll always be first movers, and we want to be there to give that opportunity in a safe and a responsible way, and we will. But that's the first thing. In this case, the airlines have to deal with their own economics. Here in the U.S., there's some airlines that ban a middle seat. There are others who are going to fuller capacity. That's going to be, I think, largely an individual decision. I frankly don't see a lot of offers being out there given the economic challenges that they have now. That may, of course, all change as the situation unfolds and they really can assess demand. But I think we need to be able to assess that demand through open borders first and foremost. I don't think this is going to be out of the gate a big opportunity. I think perhaps over time, as there really is a need for recovery, that may get some of those perhaps a little bit higher risk folks to go. I mean, even in Egypt, there was a point where price did make a difference in moving volume. So I won't say that won't be necessary, because it will, but I don't think that's certainly the only factor when you're talking about personal health.
No. Great. Jennifer, thank you very much indeed. That's been delightful talking to you.
It's always a pleasure, and we can't wait to come see you all in person.